Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're taking very good care out there. My name is Dr. Lisa Coleman, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Global Inclusion and Strategic Innovation at NYU, and I use she and her pronouns. We're thrilled to welcome you to today's Transformation Talks series, where we spotlight leaders to learn from their journeys and gain knowledge about how to be agents of change, working toward transformational change across our organizations and locations. In OGI, we engage global diversity and inclusion principles with an intersectional focus on nimbleness, inclusivity, resilience, transformation, growth mindsets, design thinking, and adaptivity in all of our work. Transformation Talks is part of our NYU Be Together initiative focused on innovating, acting, and transforming together. Today, we have the distinct honor to welcome Anna Deavere Smith. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to read your bio and then we'll jump right into the questions.
Oh,
Anna Deavere Smith is a playwright and actress. She's credited with creating a new form of theater. Her works for theater are composed of excerpts of hundreds of interviews. They tell stories about contemporary issues from multiple perspectives. Plays and subsequent films include Fires in the Mirror and Twilight Los Angeles, Let Me Down Easy, and Notes from the Field about the school to prison pipeline. Movies include Philadelphia, The American President, Rachel Getting Married, and Billy Crystal's new movie, Here Today. Television includes The West Wing, Nurse Jackie, and Blackish. She is featured in an upcoming television series produced by Shonda Rhimes. President Obama awarded Smith the National Endowment for the Humanities Medal, and she is also the recipient of the MacArthur Fellowship and several Obie Awards and the George Polk Career Award in Journalism. She was runner-up for the Pulitzer Prize and nominated for 2 Tony Awards and the winner of a Drama Desk Award and the Dorothy and Lillian Gish Prize. She is a professor at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, and she has received numerous honorary doctorate degrees, including those from Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, Spelman, and Juilliard. Smith was elected to the American Academy of the Arts and Sciences in 2019, and she most recently received an honorary doctorate from Oxford this fall. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. So I'm going to jump off with the first question.
okay.
Okay. As I like to begin with, I do with each of our guests that we're featuring as part of this series. As you think about the work you've done and think about the ever-changing global landscape, although sometimes it seems like it's not changing as fast as perhaps we would like, certainly in terms of thinking about social inequity issues globally. How do you think about transformation and the work within the context of your roles as a revolutionary actress, playwright, professor, and activist?
I think transformation is very hard on any level whatsoever. Let's just take, for example, a play of mine that's going to be on now, is on now in New York, Twilight Los Angeles, 1992, about the uprising in LA. And way back then, and it's very sad how much is still relevant now, almost 30 years later, particularly still in the wake of George Floyd. But just in a situation like that, where I'm changing the script and I recreated it for 5 actors, just in tech rehearsal, I'm being just like basic here, just in tech rehearsal, if I want to move something that one actor is doing to another part in the script, it involves all these other people, right? It involves a video designer, it involves a lighting design, it involves the actors themselves. And so something that looks like it should just be, oh, let's put that after that is like 2 hours of work. And that's just a metaphor for one of the reasons that transformation is difficult is that when you try to move yourself or when you try to move a group of people, there are other groups of people and other selves and other things, other physical realities, and they all have to be managed, because in the end, you can't really just barrel through. That's, something about that is a little bit violent. So I think transformation is difficult because of all the pieces that have to be adjusted. Even when we personally put ourselves through a moment of transformation, we want to change our career. We want to lose weight. We want to divorce. We want to change how we are in the world in general. There are a whole lot of pieces that have to, nothing is singular. And this is why transformation is so difficult, not to mention, trying to have political transformation, or a place like NYU. I teach in a little silo, but from where you stand, you understand the university has many pieces, and you can't just go do something because there are all these pieces going this way, going that way. And it's a lot of work, and you have to have a lot of different skills if you are the person causing the transformation.
Thank you so much for that answer. That was really absolutely, transformation is so hard. And that's exactly right. You have people with different even understandings, right, into whatever is probably even trying to be transformed, let alone
people with different personalities.
Exactly.
Different personality. I mean, let's just put race and everything, not that we can ever put it aside, gender, class, power. People have different personalities, and really good leaders and managers have to be people, they just do. And one of the coolest jobs I ever had was working as artist in residence at MTV Networks back in the Tom Freston days. And Tom Freston was the kind of guy, I mean, he could talk to the people in the mailroom, take them out to lunch, talk to, the people. He was a person who was comfortable with himself, and he liked people. And by the way, I don't think there's any, I would doubt, let me know, because I want to visit this class. I doubt if there's a class at NYU called Liking People.
I know.
I mean, it's not even a value, right? Oh, she's smart. Oh, he's gorgeous. Oh, look at that head of hair. Oh, look how he can count or dance, but not like, look how he likes people.
That's right. And
like people. I'm serious. That would be
I know. And it's such a needed skill.
Like people, because it's hard.
It's hard, and it's a needed skill, right?
I mean, that's skill.
Oh, now that you've talked about it, I'm gonna have to look into that. Into that class. I need to know. Okay, so in our office, we think about all of the university campuses, just like you mentioned, actually. And sometimes I actually say it feels like I'm working with a giraffe, a bear, and a panther all at the same time when I'm working across the schools, right? And so thinking about core strengths and that leaders need. And I think you've just sort of talked about that, right? People. But when we think about the arts in particular, right, what are some of the strengths that you think not only, I mean, maybe that have made you successful, but that have made others successful as you think about, in particular, that ability, people, but to be nimble and adaptive?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a very hard question to answer right now, because we're going through a lot of changes in the arts, and particularly in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. So there are a lot of questions in the arts, why is it that after, say, for example, I mean, I started in the arts when the only playwrights being produced at major theaters were like, Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams and Tom Starpa. We hadn't heard of August Wilson. We hadn't heard about women, hadn't heard about Tony Kushner. We had nothing like, so I really have gone from a time that power really was, and artistic power was white males, to a time now that's very different. And even so, we look around, I'm in a group called Black Theater United, and go, well, why are all the artistic directors in these major theaters, why are they white? Why, when we look at a crew in particular, for example, why is everybody white? Now, I just had a chance to go back to Blackish, where I've worked off and on. I don't work there very often. As you know, they're wrapping up their 8th season, enormously successful project. And I went back after not having been there a couple of years. They thought that they should have me back. I'm Rainbow's mom, Tracy Ellis Ross's mom.
Yes,
and that is, and I went there first in 2015, and sort of maybe I've been there 6 times. That is the most diverse environment I have ever been in. And it's in addition to, oh, here's a woman with a cinematographer today or whatever. It's also, there are all these young people around, like masses of interns learning the trade, and not just race. Like there's large people, for example. Like, this is a business where everybody, whether they're on camera or off camera, is a thin white man for the most part. And so, when I go someplace, so I saw something like that at Blackish last month. It was so moving. I go, well, this is possible. And it's because of leadership. I don't know who hired who, but everybody was on board for it. The thing is called Blackish. But so that doesn't happen anywhere in my business. And the theater right now, lots of people are calling for changes in all kinds of ways. In addition to the fact, and now that we had this awful tragedy that we just heard about it on the set with Alec Baldwin.
Yes.
The way we are expected to work like pieces in a cog, this is really being questioned. And, part of me, I'm this curmudgeon who's been around forever and ever. And they're like, well, that's what you have to do. You work whatever. But then something like that happens that's going to have a huge influence on the industry. That's like, no, it's not cool to be at that speed of production. So it's just saying in my industry, the industry that I'm in, which is a very influential industry, not just the amount of money involved, but the numbers of people who figure out who they are, how they spend their time, what they desire by engaging with that industry, even in itself, it can talk about justice and diversity all it wants, but there's something in the very cogs of how it's made that have to be dusted off. And I've seen the call for this throughout my career. I think this is a malleable moment because it's not just about race this time. There are a lot of issues that want attention. The window is small. I don't need to, is open for a very short period of time normally. So I don't know how much could happen. So your question is about what's a leader in this time? You know the answer. The leader is somebody who is nimble and humble and has doubt, not confidence, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for pointing out, particularly in your industry, the shifts and the changes, because I think many industries are changing and shifting, but also pointing out that small window of time. And I think you're exactly right. When I think about emerging generations and all of and what's happening there, it's really challenging. I'm going to hope, well, we'll see. We shall see. But there are certainly some changes afoot. All right. So my next question is really, we're going to turn a little bit to your leadership journey. And so I have a very dear friend, and she asked me this question a while ago about what would my 8-year-old self think of myself today? And I'm not sure what my 8-year-old self would think of myself today. But as I thought about that, I thought about some of the challenges, especially as emerging leaders, right? Emerging leaders face in the arc of their career, et cetera. And particularly because a lot of the people who will be watching these talks are from emerging generations, right? To be our students, et cetera. And so could you talk to us a little bit about describe a challenge, something that you have negotiated, something that you had to move through. Tell us a little bit about how you did that.
Well, I mean, you're always, I can't think of a time that I haven't had a challenge, even in academia. And in the end, I would say you do have to have allies. And you do need to go where to seek advice, because you can't really move very well in systems without an escort. You just can't. And so I would say that's really important, is to plan out and know, who you're going to go to help you move around where you are. And you can't expect it to come to you. You can't expect that there's even your mentor, even if there's a mentor comes to you, might not be the person who can really fix something, a particular thing. So the big thing is that I started with is there's many pieces, and you need to know when it's time to find somebody to talk you through those many pieces. And so I was lucky, particularly with academia, that I had friends who were really in academia more than me. I mean, here I'm an artist, for example, on the tenure track, where it wasn't just the problem of race, which I did face, wasn't just the problem of being a woman that I did face, not at NYU, but another school. But also that I was an artist, and artists don't really have a place, particularly when you come to the notion of tenure and the real rigid medieval, medieval history of universities. So I really had to have people who just told me what I was in and told me what to do. And real simple things like don't go to a meeting without a yellow pad and paper, take notes. And I mean, simple stuff that I never thought about. I was a bohemian. And then the opposite is true in the arts, where there's no clear nothing. And, you have to go on vibes. I mean, it's not like that. So know where you are, know who could possibly be an ally, just to sort of escort you around, I would say.
That's terrific, just terrific information. And of course, thank you for mentioning systems and power, because I think sometimes people don't understand that they're navigating systems and power. And so they need people to help them figure that out. And so tell us a little bit about some of the proudest moments. I mean, you have quite a career. So tell us a little bit about some of the proudest moments as you reflect back over the course of your career.
Well, first I want to say something about my 8-year-old self, which is that,
oh, yes.
She is still here. And in fact, I wish she were around more, right? I think that for all of us, and we understand it as creative people, I sort of can't imagine, people at administrative offices at NYU, but you tell me, I'm sure they do. It's, you learn don't be a child for very quickly in your life. But I think that none of us should underestimate the power of the child in us, particularly when it comes to asking to be reinvigorated in terms of imagination and even resilience, right? Even resilience. We don't, the child self is a very resilient self. Just the fact you managed to get here out of your mother. And my mother was in labor for 5 days. I came down the birth canal and turned back up. Right? Providence Hospital, Black hospital in a segregated city, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, just that I made it out of there. Right. So think about that little tiny thing, making it out of there and managing to breathe and all this stuff. So we shouldn't underestimate the power of the child self.
That's absolutely true. I think it is so important to keep that child spirit alive, because without it, I mean, and it's so to keep play alive in a certain kind of way, because it's about keeping joy and that hope alive, which is so hard to do, I think, sometimes.
And I should tell you, Lisa, that my project right now that I'm going to be focused on is in particular how do girls manage without a caring adult in their lives? Black girls, brown girls, poor white girls, Native American girls. How do they manage in their lives without a caring adult? And I'm very interested in the kids who are in the system at an early age, who are robbed of their childhood, who, have to be grown real fast. And so when you ask me about that 8-year-old self, I'm also conscious of the girls who don't get to be girls very long at all. I mean, and they have to just grow up.
No, that's absolutely true. And we know about the disappearance of girls globally and the ways in which they're treated. I mean, and that's across, as you mentioned, various groups. So we think about indigenous communities, right? And even here in the United States, just in the Northwest, and what happens in places like Wyoming and Montana. So, oh my goodness, I'm looking forward to your next project. So talk to us a little bit about something that you're just proud of, or things that you're proud of as you reflect back.
I don't think about pride. I really don't. I think about, and I've been thinking about it a lot since about 2002, which is I really think about doubt and humility. I really do. And I'm not excited about confidence. I'm not that attracted to very confident people. I just think that there's so much unknown in the world that, other words that you have put out here in this transformation talk, I think are more important than pride. words like nimble. I mean, and even, some people talk about shame as a transformative moment. But I don't, I was very happy about this year, about that anybody would have thought I was worthy of a doctorate at, Oxford. And it was an extraordinary experience, mainly because I didn't have to talk. Usually you go to these things, you got to speak. And I think, because my whole family wanted to go, right? And the same with Harvard, and Harvard was not in real, was digital only, but they all wanted to go and they couldn't because, the Delta variant popped up.
Yes.
But I think it's less about pride and more like, wow, that meant something to them. I would say I would rather think about, when was I happy? When was I joyous?
Talk to us about that. Talk to us about joy.
Joy is so important. Joy is crucial, and I don't think it's that hard to get. You find it in moments. Friends, right? Music. I've been listening to B.B. King lately. Ironically, his extraordinary piece of music called, Everybody Want to Know Why I Sing the Blues, Why I Got the Blues. And it's an amazing song when you listen to the original lyrics in it. And so, I think that art, even when it's about the blues, even when it's it is a form of ecstatic being. And so I'm lucky that I get to do that, working on this play right now with these 5 actors who I think are so wonderful. I get joy when I see them, connect to something that I performed 30 years ago. So it's all around us,
As much research demonstrates, and certainly this is some of the work that we do in our office. And when we think about innovation, the imagination, all of those kinds of things, right? Those things can't be created, I think, and this goes back to that sort of, they can, but the homogeneity of it, right, doesn't allow for things to sort of flourish in a way that might actually lead to a more dynamic process, right? And so as we think about, and particularly you being credited with creating new forms of theater, can you tell us a little bit about this idea of innovation and imagination, which you brought up earlier, and talk to us a little bit about that as you think about just your work and the way, and your work has been so responsive to so many things in the moment, but also, right, has also withstood the test of time in so many ways. So,
I think this is a moment for innovation in the arts, and we see it all around us. And I'll be teaching next spring at NYU, I always really try to turn that space over to my students I'm pretty strict, but within a context of, I always say I'm going to talk a lot in the beginning, and success, you'll be doing all the talking. By the talking, I mean that they are coming up with new ideas. And I think that this is a time, it's sad to say, the moments of innovation in art in America, if we put technology aside, have really come also with the general rebellion about identity. And, because the world of the theater in particular is about identity and action coming together, right? A human being and a human being, something happening because of conflict before human beings. And so, those doors don't move, those forms don't change, unfortunately, without pressure from the outside. And between the pandemic and George Floyd, and the non-binary movements that are going on right now, it is a moment where innovation is afoot. And, it's like, I think for anybody who's studying art right now in NYU, they know this. We don't need to, in a way, probably the most avant-garde thing to do would be to do something old-fashioned, because I can assure you that the studios and, dorm rooms and back in places where people are washing dishes or working at Starbucks or whatever they are doing, that innovation is afoot right now.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for, I mean, it's so important to so many areas and fields. And so thank you for that answer. Given your leadership journey and given all of the things that you've been able to accomplish, is there anything that you wish you had known earlier, that someone had given you a piece of advice, or something that actually people did give you really good advice about and you knew, and it really helped, right? Spark. And this question is really, again, because we have a lot of emerging leaders and artists, et cetera, out there. So really thinking about that as you reflect back.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I said really is you just can't go anywhere without escorts. You know, even when I think about the work I'm doing now with the girls, right? You know, my first stop was a Native American community in Northern California, the Yurok tribe. I can't move around that tribe without an escort. We also went to Salinas, you know, behind what's called the lettuce curtain. Yeah. Or I'm working on a project in Chicago about gang violence. And they're these people who I met. I'm very dependent on a group called Chicago Cred that Arnie Duncan, former Secretary of Education, has, in which he works with the shooters. You know, a lot of people work, say, early childhood intervention. He's working with the shooters. And, you know, the people who are so important to me, who I've only met on Zoom, are people in the street who have what's called a license to operate, which means they had status. They had status. Either their father had status, right? But, you know, you're not going to be no Lisa Coleman or Anna Deavere Smith walking in those streets, right? Yeah. So it's just that you have to know where you are, and you have to find the people, whether that is at NYU, whether that's working at a hospital, whether that's working in Hollywood. You got to find the people who have a license to operate and have them show you around, because most of the places I've been have been pretty rough. And I'm not talking about, the streets of LA, which is, 320 people I interviewed, right? And I'm not talking about that. But to be a Black woman and to say this now, to hear myself say this now, almost amazes me for what I've seen and what I've been through. To be a Black woman in this world to this day is a revolutionary act in itself, just to show up. Sorry. And you have to find the people, whatever race they are, whatever gender identity they have, who have a license to operate. You cannot do it by yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for being in conversation with me today. I am so appreciative. I'm so appreciative of your work, and I am incredibly, incredibly thankful for this conversation, especially for the people who are out there and will be able to take part in this. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you again for joining us today for this conversation with Professor Anna Deavere Smith. We hope that you will continue to follow the Office of Global Inclusion for more of our Transformation Talk series, as well as updates, events, programs, and resources, and that you will partner with us in our efforts to do this important work that we do across the institution. Thank you again, and please take good care.